afternoon. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. It is October 3rd, and my name is Patricia. I work for the City of Mountain View's Rent Stabilization Division, and I am one of the managers over here overseeing the utility adjustment petition process for property owners. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. So we're going to go over a very high-level review of stuff that we've covered in the past. What is the petition process? Why does it exist? What were the regulation changes and updates? I always want to do that just to make sure that we capture everyone who may have kind of wanted to join and couldn't before. Or just to give us a reminder, because there's a lot of stuff going on all the time for everybody, and I want to make sure that everyone is caught up to speed. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to take a look at the process, what you need to gather as you're thinking about starting to complete these petitions, when the deadlines are for submission. And we're going to take a look at the form, the petition form itself, the petition workbook, and some of the updates that recently happened at the Rental Housing Committee meeting on Thursday. So that's a brief overview. We're going to go as fast as we can, but as always, I'm here to answer questions. So if you want to ask any, please do so using the Q&A function or raising your hand, and we can ask them live. If you have a question that will be answered during the workshop later on in the workshop, I will not respond to it until we get to that portion of the workshop. So just know that I'm not ignoring you. I see your question. I know it's there. We're just going to be waiting to answer it. So without anything else from me, before I get started, does anyone have any questions about what we're going to be reviewing today? Again, you can use the Q&A function for that. Okay, and if you're joining us through phone, go ahead and use *9 to ask a question. So here we go. So we are going to go over the changes in utility billing, or the updates, and what you should be thinking about here. There were clarifications made in the regulations to really drive home the point that under the CSFRA, rent includes utilities and is subject to the rent increase limitations. These include that only one increase can happen every 12 months. They are subject to the yearly rent increase limits, otherwise known as the Annual General Adjustment, or AGA, and there can be no fluctuating rental costs within a 12-month period. So this is where we kind of come up against the CSFRA and RUBS not quite working together. They don't fit. So on December 18th, 2023, just about a year ago, the Rental Housing Committee adopted regulations clarifying that utilities are part of rent for units fully covered by the CSFRA. If you are a mobile home park owner or a mobile home owner, these regulations don't apply to you. If you are a building that only has partially covered units, these regulations do not apply to you. If you have a property where you have partially covered units and fully covered units, these regulations only apply to your fully covered units. So in order to incorporate those utility costs that are being charged through RUBS or being paid directly to the landlord for services that aren't directly linked to a tenant's usage, we have a one-time process that will allow property owners to incorporate those utilities that are currently charged separately and are not submetered into a fixed amount included in the tenant's total rent. And this is what we're talking about today, the utility adjustment petition process. So it's going to take your current physical space rent plus those separate utilities that aren't submetered and make one total rent. And all landlords, regardless of whether or not they think that they are using RUBS, have to complete this process, because tenants have to have the ability to respond to the petition. Okay, so that's really important to know. So what properties are affected? All landlords of fully covered units need to complete and submit this petition for verification and to allow for a tenant response. Again, partially covered CSFRA units are not affected by this petition, and neither are mobile homes. So really quick, before I jump into the key points of the regulations, I see we have a question, and I'm going to take a look at it now. has there been any discussion around decreasing the documentation requirements for properties that do not use RUBS? There are less documentation requirements and requirements in general for properties that do not use RUBS. You will be using the condensed version of the petition workbook, and that requires a lot less information. You will have to show some sort of proof that there are submeters or that all of your leases include utilities in the rent already. So if you are in a situation where you think you might be exempt from this particular full petition process, you're going to want to reach out to us. Also, the petition form and workbook will specify what you need to do there. Good question. Okay, so moving on. Key points of the regulations. So the question comes up, what utilities are included in rent? And those are the utility charges paid by the tenant directly to the landlord or through a third-party billing service like RUBS. This could include water, sewer, garbage, and in some cases, electricity and gas. We do have a few properties where they are not submetered yet through PG&E, so it's rare, but it can happen. And our workbooks do account for those rare instances. So again, utility charges paid directly by the tenant for their exact usage to a utility service provider like PG&E that are submetered are exempt from this incorporation into rent. And if you are a property owner who already includes utilities in the fixed amount of rent, that's okay. That is great. That is exactly what you're supposed to be doing under this law. And you will need to file a petition, the condensed version of the petition, just letting us know that that's what you already do. You cannot now try to charge more for utilities. That's not allowed. That would be in contraindication of the CSFRA. So just know that what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. You don't have to go through the full petition process. You're doing exactly what you needed to be doing from the start. So the key points of the regulations are for tenancies that start on or after March 1st. So these are new tenancies. The rental amount must include utilities. So if you were using RUBS, RUBS can no longer be used as of March 1st for new tenancies. The rental agreement must state the total rent amount and specify the types of utilities and housing service fees that are included in rent. For existing tenancies that existed prior to March 1st, RUBS can continue for those tenants until the utility adjustment petition is filed and approved with the city, and you have given the notice of rent increase, the notice of upward or downward adjustment of rent, and that goes into effect. So you can keep using RUBS until these new charges go into effect, okay? So this process transitions separate utility charges into one fixed rent amount. And then just keep in mind that most tenant petitions for current tenancies that are about utilities are paused during this transition process, unless you as the property owner are, doing something that is completely egregious with your charging of utilities, or if a tenant moved in after March 1st and are being charged RUBS, they can still file petitions. Okay, so a little bit more detail. Again, for new tenancies, RUBS is not allowed. The total rent must include utilities. The rental agreement must state the total rent amount and specify the types of utilities and housing services that are included. And the utility charges paid directly by the tenant to a utility service provider or submetered utilities are exempt. For existing tenancies, RUBS can continue for a limited time. The utility charges, and this is important, utility charges for vacant or newly rented units may not be allocated to existing rental units through RUBS or similar systems. So you're going to want to and need to contact your RUBS provider and let them know that you can no longer do that. And again, utility charges paid directly by the tenant to a utility service provider are exempt. This is a little bit more detail on tenant petitions. I'm going to skip over it. If you have a tenant petition that's filed, we'll be in contact with you anyway. So again, if you want to just take a look at this on your own time, you can, but I'm going to skip over it today. And before we jump into the utility adjustment petition process itself, Are there any questions out there? Okay, so here's our implementation plan. We are in currently stages 4, 5, and 6. So stage 4 is outreach and education. You're here today receiving the benefits of that phase of the implementation plan for this process. And then we have phases 5 and 6. Phase 5 is where you are submitting petitions to us. And phase 6 is for us to process those petitions. And we actually do already have a few that we are going through and making sure that the process works. So if you are one of our people who have already filed petitions or who are working with us to make sure that everything is as smooth as possible, thank you so much for that. It's greatly appreciated. So again, who does this process apply to? It's for all landlords of fully covered CSFRA units. Every single one of you needs to file and complete and submit a one-time utility adjustment petition. Depending on the current scenario for billing utilities, there's different portions that will apply. There's different workbooks specifically, and different information needs to be provided. We will let you know that information in the forms and the workbooks. And obviously, if you gave us a call, we would let you know that way too. So this is the big question: which petition process is required for your property? And this is based on how tenancies in existence before March 1st are being billed for utilities. So there's 3 different workbooks. Most property owners will work with our standard workbook, which is for properties where RUBS is being used for garbage, water, and trash. We also have some unique properties where PG&E, where what's typically in PG&E is also being billed through RUBS. That will have an expanded workbook. And then our condensed petition is for properties where everything is already submetered and or included in the total rent. So that one will require less documentation and less work overall. And we will again help you determine, the forms help you determine which one you are, and we will provide any kind of guidance that we can if you have questions about which workbook you should be using. So you're always going to want to do the petition form first itself. It's going to help you figure out which workbook you should be doing. We have 3 workbooks, and they are very clearly marked as to which one you need based on what you mark in your petition form. So there are rolling deadlines for when these petitions need to be submitted to our office. Within 6 months, properties that have more than 20 units need to submit their petition for initial review to us. Now, does that mean that it has to be perfect? No. Is this your formal filing deadline? No. You need to submit the petition for review to us by February 28th, 2025, if you're in a property that has more than 20 units. If you have a property that has 6 to 20 units, you need to submit by May 31st. And if you are in a small property, you need to submit by August 31st of 2025. So again, these are rolling deadlines. If you do not submit your petition for review by these deadlines, you forego the ability to incorporate these utilities into rent. Whatever the current rent is without utilities is now assumed to include utilities, and your tenants can file petitions to receive whatever overpayment in rent they've had since the time that they moved into the unit after December 23rd of 2016 until now, for their overpayment, potential overpayment for having paid for RUBS charges separately. They can file petitions to have that money be recuperated. So you really want to get your petition in by these submittal deadlines, because if you don't, there are potentially some pretty large consequences. So again, if you need any kind of help, any kind of support, we're here to help, and we are dedicated to making sure that as many people as possible can meet these deadlines. So just keep these in mind. This is on every single communication that we're putting out. It's in the petition forms multiple places. It's in our messaging to property owners. Please, please, please be aware of these dates. They are critical. So what does the process look like? This is a very high level overview. You're going to submit a property-wide petition form. We're going to review it. You're going to receive a notice of submission review from us. And I'm going to show it to you right after this. It's going to tell you exactly where you are in the process. It's going to say, hey, your petition looks ready to serve. Hey, your petition has some problems. Or, hey, you missed your submittal deadline. This process is done for you. And then we will send out notice to your tenants that you missed the submittal deadline. So just keep that in mind. You'll see that first from us. And then if you're ready to serve, you are going to serve the petition using our proof of service form that we've created for you and a cover letter that we've created for you with the petition and the workbook, not your documentation. Documentation stays with us. You send that, you serve that on your tenants, and then you're going to let us know, and you're going to say, hey, we served this. You're going to provide us with your proof of service forms, and that's going to be considered your formal filing date. We will then send out a notice of formal filing to everybody that also includes a tenant response form, because tenants have to be able to respond to the claims that you made in your petition, saying, actually, my rent does not include utilities yet, or what I paid, this is not, looking like anywhere near accurate. This landlord has a pool. They don't, qualify for the exemption from the common area deduction, or my unit has no bedrooms, but this is saying I have 5. So the tenant has to be able to go through and make sure that they know what is happening and what is being claimed against their unit. They have 30 days to respond to the petition. After that, we review the petition and selected calculations and tenant responses. And then if there are any kind of questions that we have, we're going to reach out to the property owner or to the tenant, follow up. And if not, then the process is done. We send out a notice of final determination that states what the increases are. And then you, the property owner, will determine if the adjustment is an upward or downward adjustment and apply it accordingly. There are steps clarifying that process. That is what was just reviewed by the Rental Housing Committee, and I am going to have details on that coming up. Okay, so how does the utility charges become part of rent? The first thing that you as the property owner are going to do once we send out our notice of final determination is figure out if the utility adjustment is a downward adjustment or an upward adjustment. And you're going to do this using a form and worksheet that will calculate everything for you that is provided by us. So we're going to send out your notice of final determination, and with that, there'll be this other workbook, and it will be prepared, ready for you to input your information. So that workbook will average the utilities paid by each unit between July 1st and June 30th of 2024, plus 3.2%. And it will compare that average against the amount in the one-time utility adjustment in the notice of final determination. So you are going to have to get the utilities paid by each unit during that time period and insert that into this workbook. And then this workbook will compare that, and it will tell you if it's an upward adjustment or a downward adjustment. If the amount in the notice of final determination is less than the average monthly utility paid by the tenant between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th of 2024, then the adjustment is a downward adjustment. If the amount is more than the average, then it is an upward adjustment, okay? And this is the portion of time. So there are no appeals in this process. There are no hearings in this process, except for at this point, the tenant can dispute whether or not it's an upward or downward adjustment. If it's determined that the adjustment is a downward adjustment, so if it's determined that the process has this outcome where the adjustment is less than what the tenant paid on average during their time period of that 12-month window, then you as the property owner must provide a 30-day rent decrease notice to tenants immediately with the new total rent amount, which is the current rent plus the utility adjustment. Tenants are no longer responsible for paying utility charges billed separately from rent or through RUBS incurred after the effective date of the rent decrease notice, unless the utility charges accrued prior to the end of the 30-day notice period. So we know that the property, the way that properties are billed through RUBS usually means that the tenant will receive a bill, like typically it's 2 months after the charges have incurred. So what this is saying is that when the tenant receives those, like let's say you go to give the downward adjustment notice in May, there's a 30-day period there where it's still being charged through RUBS. The downward adjustment goes into effect June. If the tenant receives a bill for April and May in June or July, they are still responsible for paying that RUBS bill. The minute that it turns June 1st, that rent decrease notice becomes effective, then the charges incurred on or after June 1st are now considered part of rent. Okay, and so those RUBS bills, if they existed, would not be able to be charged to the tenant. And tenants are now responsible for paying the total rent amount, including the utility adjustment, once the notice becomes effective. If it's an upward adjustment, you as the property owner can add in the utility adjustment amount determined in the notice of final determination with the next annually allowed rent increase. And if you do not want to give the annually allowed rent increase, that's okay. Sometimes property owners don't want to give the AGA. It's still totally up to you, but you have to give the utility adjustment. So even if you don't give the AGA, you have to give the utility adjustment. And how to do that? We would first determine the annual general adjustment percentage on the existing rent, if you want to give it, and then you would add the utility adjustment to the new rent. If, and this is continuing, if it's an upward adjustment, if you're giving the utility adjustment with the annually allowed AGA, the rent increase, the AGA portion, must comply with all aspects of the CSFRA and state noticing requirements. If you're giving the utility adjustment separately from the AGA, so you're not giving the AGA that year, the adjustment can only be given 12 months after the last rent increase or 12 months after the start of the initial term of tenancy to be within the regulations of the CSFRA. And just as a reminder, at all times before the utility adjustment goes into effect, you can continue to use RUBS for all tenancies that started before March 1st. And then moving forward, once the utility adjustment is implemented, only utilities that are sub-metered or separately metered and charged directly to the tenant can be billed separately from rent. Okay, if you do not submit a petition within the deadlines, or if you submit the petition and then you do not follow up with us, or you do not continue through the process, or comply with the applicable requirements of the process, you as a property owner forego the one-time ability to add the utility adjustment amount to the rent, and you can no longer separately charge for utilities through RUBS. The current rent amount will now automatically assume to include the utility charges. Utilities cannot be billed separately unless individually sub-metered, and tenants can file unlawful petitions with the city to recover any overpayment due to RUBS charges. So just keep that in mind. Like I mentioned, there's a pretty significant consequence if you do not submit a petition within the deadlines or otherwise comply with the requirements of the process. Okay, so I see there's a few questions. I'm going to go ahead and pause here, take a look and see if I can answer them. Once the petition is filed, we have to stop RUBS, and if so, tenants pay back charges owed between the petition and the outcome of the petitions? No, not once you file the petition. It's once you complete the whole process and you notice your tenants, and like I just mentioned, the actual effective date of that rent adjustment, either downward adjustment or upward adjustment, goes into effect. That's when RUBS stops. So there's no confusion there. It's not once it's filed, it's once the process is complete. In the documentation, it shows that the petition served to the resident must include the completed and redacted workbook. This information is useful for the residents if they have RUBS, but is not useful or informative if the building does not have RUBS. So the tenant has to be able to look at their unit and make sure that what the property owner is stating is actually accurate and applicable to them. So it provides them an answer to do that. Will you be providing a copy of the PowerPoint to each of the attendees following the workshop? Yes, we always do. You will receive an email from us. Everyone who signed up for this workshop receives an email, usually within a week, with the petition. We'll have the petition form, a link to the website, a link to this recorded webinar on YouTube, and a copy of the PowerPoint. Good questions. All right. So we're going to keep rolling along. And I have one more question. If the utility amount to increase hits 5% or a little below 5%, are we still able to give the regular annual increase in addition to the utility increase? So these are separate. Okay, so the utility adjustment is separate from the AGA this year. The AGA is just the AGA, and then in this instance, the utility adjustment comes in. It is not linked to the AGA in any way, other than if you end up in a situation where it's an upward adjustment, you need to give it with the AGA at the same time, or if you choose not to give the AGA, you'll have to wait another year to give the AGA. So the capping and everything is not something that is kind of linked to the adjustment of the utilities. Okay. All right. So this person's asking if it's an upward adjustment would be 2 separate notices. No, we will make sure that there's a form that has it very clearly delineated that this is the AGA amount and then this is the utility adjustment amount, so that you can figure that math out yourself. Okay, so calculating the utility adjustment. We have these petition forms available to you, and I'm going to pull them up right now. You can go to our website, mountainview.gov/rent stabilization, click on the slideshow at the very intro screen, and it will take you directly to the utilities and RUBS page. If you don't do that, you see there's another little box that says information for landlords. If you click on that and then go to utility charges and RUBS, that will take you to it too. And you can always contact us. So let me go ahead and share what the petition form looks like. Share it right now. So here we go. This is what the petition form looks like. This is a fillable form. You can get it on our website. It goes over the beginning are the instructions. Please read them. They will be very helpful to you. And it has an overview of the process here, how to prepare to file the petition, how you determine what workbook you use, what you need to gather to complete the petition itself, and how you complete the petition. So it's got all of that great information, how you serve the petition, how you submit it to us, how you file, and then what the next steps are. So it really provides a lot of details about the process. Please review it. It will help you immensely. We also have a kind of relevant terms to know dictionary in here for you so that you can understand more easily what everything means and what is being referred to in here. We also included a definition of landscaping for the common area deduction. What does landscaping mean? What is exempt? What's not exempt? We have this information here, unique identifier. So someone was asking kind of about redaction and personal information. When your tenants receive your petition from you, there's going to be a difference between what you submit to the city and have for yourself and what you give to your tenants. For your tenants, the workbook will not have all of the contact information for every single tenant, and it won't even have the unit number. So we have found a process to make it a lot easier for you where you do not have to provide, let's say, for example, you had 400 units. You do not have to redact 400 copies of the workbook. Instead, we are going in and adjusting the workbooks to have unique identifiers that correlate with each unit. And then we have created a proof of service form where we're going to pull that information for each tenant into a Word document that will then PDF so that you can provide that to your tenant and not have to do that yourself. So we've kind of tried to make the process as simple as possible so that you as the landlord do not have to do that work yourself. We recognize that that would be really, really challenging to redact 400 workbooks. And so we're hoping that this process will help. Again, this has kind of everything that we could think of so that you can refer to it and understand more about what you're reading. And then you finally come, after going through all of the instructions and the definitions, the actual petition form. It's pretty simple. The petition form itself has your contact information, whether or not you need interpretation and translation support, representative information. So if you are a property manager, I want to flag this for you. You need to fill out a representative authorization form to be able to complete this petition on behalf of the property owner. We have those available, and you have to do it. It's kind of a critical step in the process. You're going to provide your property information. When do you need to submit by? So this is all fillable. You just click on it. Well, it should be working. This one's not quite working for me right now. We've made a couple updates and it looks like that update didn't work. So I will get that fixed for you. Your common area amenities and deductions, what workbook you need to be using, and then your documentation, what documentation you're providing. And finally, if you're missing any documentation, if there's anything else you'd like us to know, you can type right in there. And then the actual declaration. So you're not going to sign this when you submit it to us. You're going to sign this once you get ready to serve this on your tenants. So that's what the petition form looks like. And now I'm going to go ahead and share with you the workbook. And I see we have a couple questions here. And let's see. We're going to go ahead and answer those in a little bit. So this is what our workbook looks like. Again, we have taken the brunt of the work for you and have really made this as easy as possible for you to be able to determine the information that you need to complete this process. So the first sheet here in the workbook is instructions, and it gives you what you need to do and documentation that you need to attach. So everything is here in sheet number 1 labeled instructions so that you can fill this out. Now, the next one is contact information for your tenants. And then this here, worksheet 2, unit info, is where we start getting into kind of the meat of the workbook. So I'm going to fill out just a couple cells for you so that you can see how it works. This is a drop down. So one thing I want to note is that everything that you see that is white within a functional portion of the worksheet, like you see here under number of bedrooms or building makeup, is something that you will need to fill out. If it's green or gray, it fills automatically. You don't have to worry about it. We try to do that as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and click studio and 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. You can see it's doing all of this work for you. It's even calculating the number of rooms in that unit. And then for the Santa Clara building makeup, you're going to want to be very careful with this. Notice that this is about the building that the unit is in, not about the property. So if this unit is in a building with 5 or more units, we're going to let them know. It's going to do a special calculation that's pulling information from this reference sheet. And this one is in a different size building, and this one is in a different size building. We're going to tell it that it's occupied, it's vacant, and this one's occupied. Let them know when the move-in date was. If it's vacant, you're going to leave that blank. And I am going to put this last one as occupied after the start of the regulations. And we're going to put in the current rents, the date of the last rent increase, and we're going to put in the move-in date for the rent increase here, like it says to do in the instructions. How is water charged for this unit? Paid through RUBS. It's now included in rent. We're going to leave blank for those vacant units. And again, any information that you're putting in here is going to be pulled into one of these other worksheets. So whatever you're doing here is important because it's going to wind up in our future worksheets. Okay, worksheet 3 is all about that common area deduction. If you have everything on your property, laundry facilities, landscaping, and a pool, you're going to land on this 20% assumed common area deduction. For every one of these things that you do not have, you're going to say no. So in this case, this property has a pool, it has landscaping, but it does not have a common laundry facility. So the deduction is reduced by 5%. Okay, so now we have where we enter our water bills, our sewer bills, and our trash bills. I'm going to do this again, very high level. You would put in much more detail than I am here. I just want to do this so that you can see how this workbook fills itself out for you. So I'm going to put just the same dates here so that we can do this for the ease of everyone. And I'm going to have it, it's just the same thing. But I'm going to put in a little bit of higher numbers here. We'll do 1,000. Okay. So now this is pulling all of that information, pulled information from the number of rooms on the property, the common area deduction, and our water, sewer, and trash charges for that year period. And this is now doing all of that calculation here for you as outlined in the regulations so that you don't have to worry about it. This workbook does it all for you. Now, ooh, down at the bottom here. This next workbook, worksheet 6, is all done through what you inputted here. It's going to do all of the calculations for you and tell you what the allowances are and figure out which is appropriate. Now, obviously, I only put in very limited numbers. Your amount will be higher. We can even see that if I switch this up to, we'll do what I was originally going to do. See if it gets it a little bit higher. So you can see what it looks like. So yeah, it's now, okay, so the City of Mountain View allowance is higher, so it's going to revert to the Santa Clara County. It's doing a comparison here, and it's looking at what is the adjustment going to be. And then it goes over the per unit allowance in worksheet 7. And then it does the CPI increase for you. And then finally, in worksheet 8, it tells you what is the monthly utility adjustment maximum that you can use, and then you can decide how much you want to give of that maximum. Some property owners want to be able to give less than that maximum, so we allowed for there to be an opportunity for you to do that. So if you choose, you can do any amount you want here up to the max. So a property owner could put in, $150 and say this is the tenant's new proposed utility adjustment amount. So this is the workbook that you will submit to us for review with your petition form before you serve it on your tenants. This is what has to be completed and provided to us with the evidentiary documentation before or on those submittal deadlines that I shared earlier. Okay, and then I'm also going to share one more item with you, and that is our submission review form. So once you provide your submittal to us, we're going to review it, and then you're going to receive this communication from us. If your petition is ready to serve, it will have a box checked that says ready to serve. If it's not ready to serve, it will have that box checked. And if you miss your submittal period, you'll also receive one of these from us saying that your submission is denied, if you sent us one after the deadlines. So if this box is marked, this one here that says petition submission appears complete will also be marked, and it's going to tell you the next steps of what you need to do. And you will receive information, explicit information from us on that. If it appears incomplete and corrective action is needed, we will mark this box as well as whatever the corrective action is that you need to do. And that's for all of the different parts of the petition form or the worksheet, or if you're missing documentation. So it's pretty clear on what you need to do. And then if you submit after the deadline and it's not accepted, this is what you will need to do to be in compliance with the law. So that's what that looks like. Again, you will receive that from us, that communication from us, once you submit your petition for review with us. And it looks like I have a couple questions, and we'll see if we can answer them now. Where are the forms for the property managers located? If you're talking about the representative authorization form, I can send you one of those. They're also on the website. How do we separate the sewer and water charge if they are billed together and not broken out? Usually they are broken out. You can request those from the city. If they're not, they typically are though in your bills. Go ahead and send me an email and we can help you figure that out. And I have a question that does not pertain to this process. And Connie, go ahead and send me an email about this and I can answer your questions offline, or you can join me for office hours on Tuesdays between 10 and 12, or during the Landlord Help Center on Thursdays between 1 and 3. Okay. All righty. So I'm not going to go over this. This is actually all done in that workbook. So you don't have to know how all of this breaks down. You can, of course, but we made the workbook do this work for you. So you don't have to worry about all of the steps. You can definitely go through it and figure it out, but the workbook does it. So you don't have to know all of the details that are here. However, they're there for you, and they'll be in the PowerPoint when I send out the copy of the PowerPoint tomorrow or next week. So what do you need to prepare for the petition? So you need to gather your utility bills. You need to figure out if you have those common area facilities, document your pool, your landscaping, your laundry facilities on the properties, pictures of floor plans, screenshots from the satellite view from Google Maps will totally work to show us what your pool, whether your property has a pool or not. That is a great tool, something that I would highly recommend using for this. It really takes the stress of it off. Unit information, you're going to want to gather that. And then proof of utilities, if they're included in rent or if your property is submetered, pictures of the submeters will work, and individual bills, and then an example of a rental agreement that includes utilities as part of rent are acceptable. Let me just talk about that. And then that's it for this workshop. I can go ahead and answer more questions. Someone's asking about pet rent or extra parking space. This is just a process for utilities. So this does not affect pet rent or extra parking spaces. It's only for utilities. You can save the workbook. Another question about if you can save the workbooks. You can save the workbooks just like you can save any Excel file once you download them. There is a question about tab 7 of the workbook B, and go ahead and contact me, Jana, so that we can take a look at what's going on with your workbook. We had a problem at the beginning. If you're using an older copy of the workbook, like let's say you downloaded it earlier in the month or right when they were released, that some formulas were only accessible in newer copies of Excel. So if you have an older version of Excel, it couldn't work, but we fixed that. So it should be working just fine unless you're not inputting enough information. Someone's asking if we do not charge tenants for utilities and do not use REBs, do we still need to do this petition? Yes, you have to do the condensed version of the petition so that your tenants can respond to the petition and let us know if what you're saying is accurate. So that is really important. The tenants have to have a way to be able to say that they are not, that what you're putting in the petition is not accurate, that they are paying for the utilities through REBs. So yep, you still have to do it, but it's a shortened version. Okay, so if you have any other questions, you can join us every single Thursday right now. You can come into our office at 298 Escuela, or you can join me virtually every Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m. We are here to help you. We are here to help with these petitions. And you can either, again, come into our office, or you can join us virtually by going to mountainview.gov/housing help clinics and just hopping in. We're here for those 2 hours. We have that dedicated time for you. So please feel free to join. Or you can also come to our office hours, which are every Tuesday from 10 to noon. They are always virtual, and you can join by going to mountainview.gov/RSP office hours. Or you can give us an email at mvren@mountainview.gov or a phone call at 650-903-6136 and leave a message. And then we have an extensive wealth of information and resources on our website, and you can access those by going to mountainview.gov/rent stabilization. Everything is there for you, and we are always more than happy to answer questions. So please reach out. And before we wrap up, are there any other questions today? Okay, well, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. We're here and answering questions as we go through the process live. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And we will have another one of these with more details soon. Have a good afternoon.